Só. Boa tarde a todos. Vocês me escutam? Legal, legal. Bem-vindo todos ao Teaços. Sejam bem-vindos, os que já são de casa, que nos acompanham esses últimos 2 anos e meio, aos que estão vindo aqui pela primeira vez, sejam todos bem-vindos. Uma ocasião absolutamente especial, né? O Teaços está ainda, e talvez esse primeiro semestre inteiro, comemorando a sua 100ª edição, né? Essa 100ª edição ela vai ser comemorada, celebrada com vários convidados especiais. Mês passado nós recebemos Joseph Cambray e hoje nós vamos ter a grata alegria e oportunidade de receber Verena Kast conosco. Seja bem-vinda, Verena. Eu vou apresentar a Verena.
Thank you very much.
Vou apresentá-la.
Boa tarde.
Boa tarde. Boa tarde. Vou apresentá-la de maneira mais formal. Verena Kast é psicóloga, psicoterapeuta, foi professora de psicologia antropológica na Universidade de Zurique, é analista docente e supervisora do Instituto C.G. Jung em Zurique e foi presidente também do curatório do Instituto. Ela foi co-diretora do Lindauer Psychotherapien, o maior evento de educação continuada em psicoterapia de língua alemã, publicou tem numerosas publicações no campo dos contos de fada, do simbolismo em geral, relacionamento, processos de luto, emoções, também em conexão com a teoria complexa e imaginação. Rapidamente. Nós temos vários livros publicados pela editora Vozes, da Verena Kast. Trouxe alguns para a gente ver. A Alma Precisa de Tempo.
Yeah. Very nice books.
Abandonar o Papel de Vítima. A Sombra em Nós. E o livro sobre o qual a Verena vai falar hoje. Filhas de Pai, Filhos de Mãe, Complexos materno e paterno e Caminhos para a Identidade Própria. Esse encontro com a Verena tem uma história prévia que eu queria contar rapidamente. Essa ideia de convidar a Verena é uma ideia sincronística que nós tivemos também com o nosso amigo junguiano Stefano Carpani. Stefano Carpani, que é uma figura recorrente aqui no Teaços, no mundo junguiano, autor de várias publicações recentes. O Stefano ele acabou de lançar uma nova, não é uma nova editora, é uma coleção dentro da editora Kiron, chamado Jungianium, que consiste basicamente em reedição de clássicos da psicologia junguiana que não se encontravam mais disponíveis. E o livro da Verena, esse, né, foi o primeiro a ser publicado nessa coleção. Então, a gente também queria agradecer ao Stefano pela oportunidade de dividir esse momento. Ele lançou o livro pela série e a Vozes aqui teve também a grata sincronicidade de republicar esse livro, que estava esgotado também no mercado editorial brasileiro, e volta agora a estar disponível para todos nós. Antes de passar a palavra para a Verena, eu queria convidar a Aline Carvalho, que é da editora Vozes, para falar um pouquinho sobre a experiência dela também com os livros da Verena pela Vozes. Aline, está aí?
Sim, estou aqui. Boa tarde. Vocês me ouvem bem?
Fica à vontade.
Primeiro, eu queria agradecer ao Teaços por esse encontro, que é um encontro muito especial, mas não só por ele, né, por esse trabalho que vocês têm feito nesses últimos 2 anos e meio. Assim, foi uma companhia para todo mundo durante a pandemia. Para mim, pelo menos, foi muito marcante poder ter tantos encontros com junguianos fundamentais para o que a gente tem hoje na psicologia analítica. Então, agradeço ao Marcos e à Luciana por esse trabalho e agradeço a oportunidade de estar aqui na abertura da fala da Verena, que é uma autora fundamental para a psicologia analítica. É uma honra poder fazer essa abertura aqui junto com o Marcos. E contando um pouquinho da chegada da Verena a Vozes, né? A gente teve ali durante um bom tempo a coleção a obra completa do Jung e tinha poucos trabalhos para além dos trabalhos junguianos. Foi em 2008 que nós começamos uma coleção, que é essa coleção do livro sobre o qual a gente vai falar hoje, as Reflexões Junguianas. Em 2008, que ela iniciou com obras de autores nacionais e estrangeiros, e, obviamente, entre os primeiros livros estava um livro da Verena, né? E por onde começar? Naquele momento, ela já tinha diversas obras publicadas, e aí tínhamos ali a possibilidade de começar por obras que tenham mais a abordagem de princípios da psicoterapia, alguma coisa mais ligada à psicologia das emoções ou interpretação de sonhos, por onde começar, né? E a gente optou por começar com a obra Sonhos, Linguagem Enigmática do Inconsciente, que nasceu em 2010 aqui no Brasil. Foi uma obra muito marcante para a coleção, e de lá para cá nós temos já publicadas 9 obras da Verena no Brasil pela Vozes, que a gente vai trabalhar hoje, né, sobre os complexos, mas a última que foi publicada agora, está saindo também, eu aproveito aqui a oportunidade para mostrar, O Sentido do Medo, está saindo também esse mês pela Vozes, e aí aproveito também para dar um recado aqui do comercial, de dizer que, por causa da live aqui da Verena, a gente está com um cupom de desconto no site todo, chamado Verena 30. Então, quem tiver o desejo de adquirir obras, tanto da psicologia quanto de outras áreas, a gente está com esse cupom Verena 30 de desconto. Então, o que eu queria salientar aqui é essa habilidade que a Verena tem, que é absolutamente admirável, né, de trabalhar aspectos tão diversos da psicologia, são temáticas muito fortes e que ela consegue trabalhar com uma profundidade muito grande em temas tão diversos. Isso é absolutamente admirável. E, além disso, além de explorar temáticas que são diversas, eu acho que uma coisa que a gente consegue perceber logo que começa a leitura da Verena é exatamente a capacidade que ela tem de falar de coisas tão profundas de um jeito que nem sempre a pessoa precisa de pressupostos teóricos para compreender. Isso é muito difícil de fazer, muito complexo, e ela faz de um jeito extremamente interessante, né? Ela consegue trabalhar questões muito profundas, como hoje a gente vai ver a questão dos complexos paterno e materno, de uma forma que a pessoa que trabalha com análise, que tem uma longa jornada já no campo analítico, consegue usar como ferramenta, como aprofundamento, mas também a pessoa que está começando a querer entender esse campo consegue, de alguma forma, se apropriar do que ela traz. Então, eu agradeço muito por ela ter essa generosidade de partilhar e de partilhar dessa forma tão acessível para todos nós. Agradeço mais uma vez a Verena, agradeço ao Tiaços por essa oportunidade, estou ansiosa para ouvi-la.
Obrigado, Aline. Sempre bom trabalhar contigo. Obrigado. Tá?
Thank you very much.
Verena.
Thank you very much, Aline. I'm very happy that I have such an active publisher in Portuguese and that you are caring for my books. The covers are really very, very nice. Thank you very much.
Verena, sinta-se à vontade. Honras da casa foram feitas.
I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable. I'm fine.
Queria só que você lembrasse o seguinte: o
Can I start?
Tiaços é uma grande festa. É uma grande festa. Então, fique à vontade, fique da maneira mais confortável possível. Para nós é uma imensa alegria te receber. Muito obrigado, tá? A palavra está contigo.
You are very, very nice. You are very kind. Okay. So, good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to be with you. I was asking myself, why did Stefano have this book? Why Stefano did have this book about father and mother complexes, which was first published in Germany in 1994 and in English in 1996 reissued? That was my question. Actually, I appreciate very much the work of Stefano. Why did he do it? I think he did it because the complexes are so important. Jung began his scientific career with the association experiment and linked it with the complex theory. That is, he began his career studying the emotions, which he understood to be the basis of what he means is to be a human being. I give you here a quotation from 1906. This quotation, nowadays, we say, oh yeah, so what? But in 1906, this was totally special. The quotation is, the essential basis of our personality is affectivity. Thought and action are, so to speak, mere symptoms of affectivity. There is a footnote, because at this time Jung was working with Bleuler, and he said affect is sentiment, feeling, emotion, affect. When we are talking about emotion nowadays, we mean what we can sense in the body. This is the emotion. When we can give this sensation in the body a word, an expression, then we are talking about a feeling. Then we have also a mood, we have an atmosphere, and so on. So I think this is for me one of the most important quotation. The essential basis of personality is affectivity. And affects cause complexes, and complexes influence affects. With this association test, Jung found out that the self-control suffers in proportion to the strength of the complex. So we can't control, we can't say what we want to say, we lose our words and so on. And Jung found there is a complex behind, there is an affective and emotional problem behind. Later, he was talking about how the complexes are generated. And he thinks, he writes, the complexes are called force whenever the individual has a painful or a significant encounter with an outer event or demand in their environment, which overwhelms them or which they do not have the capacity to deal with. This is a rather intellectual quotation, but afterwards Jung is speaking about parental complexes. And so we could say the painful or the significant encounter with an outer event or demand could be a dysfunctional relationship encounter with a parent, or also a good relational encounter with a parent. The work on complexes remains an important aspect of the clinical work in analytical psychology, a work that makes us also connectable to other psychotherapeutic directions. But the complexes are a little bit different from the schemas or from the inner working models or so on, because it is always meant that when a complex is generated, development is blocked. So something creative is blocked. This was my introduction. I originally wrote the book Father, Daughter, Mother, Son, because I heard again and again from our students, this is why I have a negative mother complex, this is why I have a positive mother complex, or if you have such and such a complex, you can't do this and this and this. And it seemed that this explains everything. I have a positive mother complex, I have a positive father complex, and so on. I then described, and I think with some pleasure, it seems for me from today, the various possible complex constellation, and worked out that dominant constellation gives people a certain atmosphere, but also a certain way of approaching the world. And other people, and has inherent, consequently, certain tasks and difficulties in separating oneself from these dominant complexes to really find one's own identity more and more. Mother complexes and father complexes with specific ego complexes, in each case, are a reservoir of complex load relational experiences. The sum of specific stories of life enhancing or life inhibiting experiences with mother or father. The specific relationship experiences, especially the dysfunctional ones, the complex episodes, how I call them, are at the base of psychological problems, at the base of emotional overreactions, of depressions and so on. They create dreams. We find them in paintings. We find them in transference, countertransference. They are central concepts of clinical work, which are always developed. Now, I come back to the work with the complex episodes in the end, if there is some time. When we talk about father and mother complexes, also in connection with respective ego complex, we touch something complicated. We talk about the reservoir of complex relational experiences in the space of the mother or the father. If these experiences are in the some rather life-promoting, we speak of an originally positive mother or father complex. If they are rather hindering, of an originally negative mother or father complex. Why originally? We generate these complexes mainly at the beginning of life. There is the relation, the link to the attachment theory. But we also have to develop. We develop until we die. This is the idea of Jung. If we remain stuck in an originally positive mother complex, it becomes negative during life. It's easily to understand what is really nice in a 3-year-old girl, for example, is not any more nice in a 30-year-old woman. So when we are talking about these generalized complexes, we are talking about the atmosphere that surrounds a person, a certain way of experiencing the world and approaching the world with expectations, beliefs, a way of relating to other people, but also specific difficulties and developmental tasks associated with it. When we talk men and women with an originally positive mother complex, experience themselves as a sufficiently good me in a sufficiently good world. They have an unquestionable right to exist. Fundamentally, they experience themselves as an enrichment of life. They have a right to live, to love, to be loved, to have and express physical and emotional needs. They are basically, should I repeat something? No. They are basically trusting in other people in the world. They expect the good. They are outraged when it does not happen. They are very kind, giving, empathetic when it suits them, and for as long as it suits them. Participation is important for him, and we is important if it doesn't take too much effort to establish it. They have fundamental convictions. Somehow there is always a solution. There is always a next day with surprisingly good opportunities. And they really mean there is a next day. The next day is a new day and everything can change. They enjoy life, are close to the senses, close to physicality. They feel carried by life. Life is good for them and they are good for life. Their maxim of life is live and let live. They have an ideology of granting. And fundamentally, issues of separation, death, but also making decisions are problematic. And this is especially true when the development to autonomy is difficult. This, if the emancipation from the positive mother complex does not take place according to age. And here is the place of the father and of the father complex. We all want to become independent. We want to develop to autonomy. With that, we want to enter new bonds, but we also want to remain bound to our ancestors. This is the dependency, autonomy conflict we are talking about in developmental psychology between the months 18 and 36. With the expansion to other people, kindergarten, school, society, self-efficacy is experienced, but also especially in doing things together, but also the self-esteem gets relativized. With a positive mother complex, you have the idea you are a princess or a prince, and now if you are going to the kindergarten or to the school, they do not need a princess or a prince, or there are such a lot of princesses and princes. That's over. It gets relativized. If this development towards autonomy does not take place adequately, the boys and girls remain mother complex. It's more difficult for the boys. They are easily relaxed. They like to be in comfort. Some say they are lazy. The roasted pigeons should fly into their mouths. They appear later as playful, as creative, but uncommitted, unreliable. They have a lot of good ideas, but they do not realize them, and then are disappointed by life, and the others are disappointed by them. If this remains during the whole life, we are talking about the poor eternos. But they are an eternal promise. For the girls, it's a little bit easier. They can identify with mother and with the mother role. First, they are girly, or they look for other good mothers. They can't find their own life. They take over the role of the mother, And they separate little, feel guilty when they are separating. And very often they have then their own children, and they think that they could restore the good mother atmosphere. They think, because the aggression that stimulates the autonomy development turns against themselves. They get angry, become depressed. Very often they have a depression about 30 when they feel that they had had such a good life. A sufficiently good development of autonomy, dependence, is made possible by parents who are affectionate, warm-hearted, who have used their own space for development, and who allow it to their children as well. And that means also that fear and aggression are well regulated. Or you have very vital kids. My idea is, I'm now an analyst since 1970, so it is more than 50 years. And I have the idea our psychopathology changes during the time, and some of the pathology is correct, some is not so correct. But what is something most people do not see, it is also an aspect of vitality. If you have very vital kids, they can have difficult parents or difficult complex constellations, but they can find their ways. So sufficiently good development of autonomy can also be the result. You can have very mothers who are really very much caring, not giving you a lot of space, but you are vital, and so you go into the world. Now, I have been speaking about the generalized complex, and no one has such an exclusively positive mother complex as I told you now. The father complex plays a role, grandparents, brothers, sisters, the world. Then you can have the mother complex from a mother who has got the mother complex from the father. So you have a father-motherly complex. And through the age-related development process, later through the individuation process, these complexes become more balanced. So why describe it like that? Actually, I think it tends to exist after all. And it shapes and colors the basis of our personality. It gives us, even if we have done a lot of development, if we have done a lot of individuation process, it is in a kind the flavor of our personality. Affects cause complexes. Complexes influence affects, and emotions are contagious. This is what Jung said in 1935 in the Tavistock lectures, and he also referred to Freud, who saw this as the essence of transference. But it is not only the essence of transference, it is also the essence of countertransference. And this phenomenon can also be understood as contagion of feeling, a fact that has been intensely researched in the last 30 years, also as a prerequisite for empathy. There is one name that is very important in this situation, that is Hatfield, Elaine Hatfield. She has done a lot of research. She started in '94, and I think the last study came out 2 months ago, something like this. Hatfield and co-workers define primitive emotional contagion as the tendency to automatically mimic and synchronize facial expressions vocalizations, postures and movements with those of another person, and consequently to converge emotionally. So as a consequence of mimicry and feedback, people are constantly picking up emotions from each other. This fact has been demonstrated by various scientists. There is one called Butler, and his statement is, also emotional contagion appears to be fairly ubiquitous. It is most likely when partners are close, physically and psychologically, when both are oriented to the same external things, and when they share compatible goals. So emotional contagion, not only in the therapeutic situation, to which I then will return, emotional contagion is, we need it all the time. We use it also. One can modulate, you know this all, we can modulate an affective state by affective scaffolds. For example, one is in a bored mood, and then listens to vital music and feels better. One would be invaded or shaped by emotion in a positive way. Music to feel better, or with women sometimes, there are days we say, today I can't wear a red dress. That's absolutely impossible. Or today I can't wear a gray dress. I need this and this. And what do? We shape our emotions with outer aspects of life. One needs environmental resources for affective needs to affect ourselves. So we have to think about that the emotion is not simply a reaction to the world, but it is an active transformation of the world. And the world is through the emotion actively transforming us. This can happen consciously, but it happens much more often unconsciously. One can be unconsciously afflicted by the environment, by a place where we are, by a party. One is supposed sometimes to conform in a situation, and this can also shape our emotion. I guess we pay too little attention to environmental situational influences, and they are very often beyond our control, but they trigger behavior. And we overestimate our unconscious access. Marginal situations can lift our mood, influence our behavior, and they bypass conscious control mechanism. This is especially through somatic intrusion. The intrusion through the body is even more immediate. So we could talk about embodied mind shaping. Embodied mind shaping. The waiter can touch you a little bit on your shoulder, and you will give him afterwards more money, more pourboire. So basically, emotional contagion is much more common than just in the context of transference, countertransference, and it is difficult to control. But now, what is Jung saying about? Jung says, and this is in the Tavistock lectures, any process of emotional kind immediately arouses similar processes in others. Emotions are contagious. In psychotherapy, the fact that the patient has emotions has an effect onto him, the doctor. He, the doctor, cannot do more than become conscious of the fact that he is affected. You have to accept the emotions and to mirror them. What Jung does not say here is it is vice versa. The emotion of the patient has not only an effect onto the doctor, the emotion of the doctor has also an effect onto the patient. And this seems to be very important for us. But Jung says even more. First, we know this, the emotions of patients are always slightly contagious. And they are very contagious when the contents with the patient projects into the analyst are identical with the analyst's own unconscious contents. They both fall in the same dark hole of unconsciousness and get into the condition of participation, which Freud has described as countertransference. It consists of mutual projecting into each other and being fastened together by mutual unconsciousness. I think it's not so much projecting, it is contagious. It is perhaps even identifying. So most confusing, the mutual unconscious is a result of contamination. This is all in the Tavistock lectures. We have here the communal unconscious. We have here the transference, countertransference matrix. And you can see the communal unconscious, and the communal unconscious is a kind of contagion. You see on the left side, I marked creativity, because we could concentrate on what is going on in this communal unconscious, and perhaps the analyst can find an image or a feeling, and this could be an emerging symbol, for example. But first, I would like to tell you a story. An analyst with an originally positive father complex meets an analysand who is also rather characterized by an originally positive father complex, and who seeks therapy because his relationships are unsatisfactory. The two get along very well and immediately connect with each other. So, what does such an originally positive father complex look like in a man? In the interaction with the child and the paternal, a great many life-enhancing episodes can be remembered. The mother and the mother complex are rather in the background. The basic conviction, what one wants, one can do. What I want, I can do. These men are adapted to the world of men, adaptable and willing to adapt. They are pragmatic, proficient, efficient, reliable, and they control dangers. They find themselves in order, and they put the world in order when necessary. This is how they understand themselves. Breakdowns in life happen when you can no longer do what you want. In case of illness, but especially in case of relationship problems. When, for example, more feelings are demanded from female partners. These men don't understand that. After all, they take care of the family, they solve problems, often before they have really arisen. Men who got their father complex from a father who is mother complexy are somewhat better balanced there. Another problem is the subliminal pressure to perform. What one wants, what the fathers want, one has to be able to do. Participation in other people is not a feeling of we, it's about a performance together and to win. If these men do not separate themselves from the father complex, they do not stand out much, or at least it is not very much noticed here in Europe. Perhaps in your country it's different. Meanwhile, they are called old-fashioned men. They are not creative either, but they keep order and they are working a lot. Now, two men in a therapeutic situation, both with this kind of father complex, who agree that one can usually do what one wants, but that this is actually not working in the relationship right now, and this must be repaired. This is why the analyst is coming for analysis. Even if the analyst, of course, knows that here the relationship to the inner world is at stake. The development of the emotional life, one side in him also wants to solve the problem very quickly. Unconsciously, he may agree with his analysis. Women just don't understand them. Unconsciously, both can assure each other that they are actually very successful people, good at dealing with problems. Therapy sessions become interesting political and ideological discussions. What falls by the wayside is the work on what has been psychologically left out until now. Feelings, imaginations, shadow stuff. Triggering this in supervision is very difficult because the analyst feels that there is again someone who does not see how good all this is. If we don't understand our patients well, we think intensively about what our countertransference is. If it is perhaps even more of a transference. But we should also do this if we understand each other too well. And this we do when we have this communal unconscious with the same complexes, when we are infected by each other. I think this idea of contagion is a very important idea, because it's not just about complexes. It is, in a way, we with all our inner life, we have an impact on our analysis. The analyses have an impact on us. We have to think about ourselves if we are not in a very good shape. How do we infect our patients? So when we take serious, and I think we have to take it serious, this communal unconscious, this being contagious, then the question is, what is to be done? What is the consequence if we assume this great contagiousness? And just not only as we assume the patient infects the doctor, but that a mutual contagion takes place, mostly unconsciously. For example, also via physical perception, unconscious physical perception. The question is how we regulate emotions, though not only those that come from within us, but also those that we have received unintentionally from the outside world. But maybe we don't have to regulate them at all. Maybe it's just the way it is. This is the invigorating togetherness, and you only have to regulate when they are really disturbing. So you have to notice these disturbances. And how to regulate when the emotion contagion is disturbing. I think working on transference and countertransference can be a model. What are our body perceptions? What do we feel? What images rise up? What kind of imagination can we create? In what broader context are they? Perhaps this is a possibility. When we are working on father and mother complexes, we are not working at these generalized complexes. We are working on complex episodes. And this is now my last part. Complex episodes are expressions of difficult, dysfunctional relationship experiences generated, especially in early childhood, with emotion, with a topic, emotionally linked also to the emotional heritage of the parents and their history. And these relationship experiences constellate again and again. If these experiences are disturbing in everyday life, such as I experience the same rejection again and again, the world threatens me, the emotion is anger, perhaps also depression, and out of these convictions are developed dysfunctional patterns of relationship, and the self-esteem is increasingly weakened because everyone rejects me. This has to do with a rejecting parent. In the therapeutic relationship, we welcome the constellation of the complex episode. An important problem in relationship shows up. It can be worked on and eventually changed. And this in a situation of an attachment bonding, connected with the friendly face of the analyst. Complex episodes become visible in stories of difficult dysfunctional relationship episodes that repeatedly occur in similar ways, consisting of comparable information, in particular about the self-image of the child and of the attacking persons. These dysfunctional relationships are accessible in narratives connected with definite emotions experienced in these difficult relationship situations, and they're also accessible in emotions. So as the complexes are generated in situations where bonding would have been important, it is a cutting down of the need to be with others, to feel attached. And if the complex episode is constellated, the patient is psychologically back in this situation of abandonment in a stressful situations. And the stories are around the basic needs of human beings, like being accepted, being loved, even in difficult situations, being seen, able to be effective and creative, being helpful to others, experiencing meanings, and so on. These stories are linked with the conviction that even new experiences are not possible. They are in the old ruts and will always be the same. Usually psychic life is dynamic. Emotions are constantly changing, thoughts and images are changing. But if a complex is constellated, psychic life is frozen. This is the place where we are working. I would like to give you now an example, because this is the way we are working on mother and father complexes. These dysfunctional relationship experiences are also accessible in narratives, linked to the emotions experienced in the difficult episode. I said this already. Usually a basic narrative is found, which is given by the analysand as evidence of a complex episode, and thus often also of an inhibition, which is a story from the past, but which can be enriched more and more. I'm talking now about a woman who says of herself that she cannot speak in front of her team, and who therefore cannot or does not want to take a higher position in her professional life. She finds a narrative underlying this complex episode based on a dream, And this makes the link to her father complex. I tell you now the dream, and I'm fond of, when I'm talking about dreams, to have an imagination, to close the eyes and to look at the dream as if it would be your imagination. I'm supposed, she says, I'm supposed to speak in front of my team. I'm in the room in which we meet to talk in reality. But the room is bigger. I have a microphone. And I'm not speaking, I am singing. There's a sound coming from somewhere. Stop that fucking noise. My colleagues look around, come closer to me, and ask me to keep singing. The dream fades, but it felt very good, and the voice is saying, fucking noise disappeared. The dreamer is surprised that she sings. She has a very sober job, she says. The singing felt good. Terrible when those voices in the background disturbed. Wonderful when her team members gathered around her and made her understand that they liked her singing. The dreamer remembers she was maybe 13 when her teacher told her that she had a very beautiful voice. So in the evening, she stands at the window of her room and sings loudly and beautifully as she sings. Her father comes by and orders her to stop her shit noise. Since then, she says, she can no longer perform in front of other people. In the dream, however, this complex episode from childhood, is a part of her father complex, is not simply repeated, but the dream has changed it. Back then, there were apparently no helpers who could have supported the girl against the father's rejection. But now, in the dream, there are. As a result, that the fear that the others might laugh at her has disappeared, and with the imagination, a we feeling also arises. Together with the others, not at the mercy of others, but with those who ask them to sing on, who ask her to sing on. These were very important impulses for her, not the fear of being laughed at. It, with this father complex, is connected the shame complex. Not the fear of being laughed at, but the good feeling of being together with others and thus being able to stand by their own. No longer the critical look projected on colleagues, but the friendly look. Not to be pushed into loneliness by criticism, but to stand together in solidarity. Again and again, the dreamer imagined the dream. I like working with the dream with imagination. She imagined the dream in work situation where she became suspicious, wondering whether her colleagues were really critical now. She also understood her singing as form of self-exposure. And she dared to address her insecurity in such situations by discussing the topic that worried her and no longer simply assuming that her employees were questioning her as a person, that they were critical. She learned that in working with others, she performed very well as a team, but above all, that she did not have to be perfect. This dream has been a dream that accompanied her for a long time. and brought about a change in her social behavior. You all know we are working very often on transference or in transference with complex episodes. The two people that form this dysfunctional relationship, the child and the attacking person, can manifest themselves in the analytical process. But it is also very important that complexes create dreams. Complexes are the architects of dreams. And if you are looking at the dreams in terms of complex episodes, you can find a lot of complex episodes in dreams. And the dreams are working on the complex episode. Sure, we are working in the therapeutic process. It's not only on the dreams, but you can, in the dreams, you can easily see what happens. So, as I already mentioned, complexes are generated in situations where the possibility of a bonding experience would have been essential in dealing with a conflict. And this should be kept in mind in the therapeutic process. When the complex episode is constellated, the patient is again in this experience of being abandoned in an emotionally difficult situation and in need of a bonding person, of a helper. In this dream, intrapsychic helpers are already appearing, a sign that this complex is in good work. The dreamer has access to helping figures in her own psyche. This is usually the result of experiencing also reliable relationships, be it through a good therapeutic relationship, but also through trusting relationships with people in everyday life. What is important for me is we are not working just at the father complex or the mother complex. We are developing, we are connected with parts of ourselves we haven't known before. But when we are working on father and mother complexes, we are working on these complex episodes. And this helps us to detach from those complexes that bind us. So thank you very much for your attention. And Isa, you did a good job, I guess.
Obrigado, Verena, pela sua exposição, muito clara, muito didática, várias perguntas assim, fervendo a cabeça para compartilhar contigo. Bom, vamos lá. Quem quiser fazer perguntas para a Verena, por favor, coloque o nome no chat, eu chamo e a pessoa faz a sua pergunta, tá bom? Lembrando que, Verena, a gente está com 341 pessoas, é a maior audiência do Tiaços em 3 anos. Parabéns. Acho que é importante marcar isso. Tá? Verena,
it's very nice.
Impressionante, bem impressionante. Eu queria começar a nossa conversa te trazendo uma questão que eu testemunho na minha clínica particular, e eu queria ouvir a tua opinião. A impressão que eu tenho, ao longo dos anos, já de uma boa experiência clínica, é que o complexo materno negativo nas mulheres, ele é devastador.
Não.
O que seria dizer isso? Quer dizer, comparando aqui mulheres com homens, né? Quer dizer, o complexo materno negativo nos homens, eu acho que ele causa alguns sintomas, alguns desdobramentos, mas que na relação das mulheres, e principalmente na relação das mulheres com as mães, na relação das mulheres com o próprio corpo e na relação das mulheres com os objetos amorosos, ele é devastador, particularmente. Eu queria te perguntar se essa impressão se a tua clínica diz alguma coisa sobre isso, se é isso que você testemunha também ou não. Queria te ouvir um pouco sobre isso. Os efeitos devastadores do complexo materno negativo sobre as mulheres.
I think we have to make a differentiation between if it is only the mother complex that is shaping the experience of the woman, and these relationship experiences have been very difficult, then I can absolutely share what you are saying. It is even they detest the body, because the body is also the body is also the motherly aspect. But then the question is, we have not only the mother complex, we have also father complex, we have grandfather complex, grandmother complexes, and sometimes we can evade. And another aspect is, this is why I brought my idea how to work with complex episodes. If we have the whole mother complex, then we have only she rejects herself, or we would say she's very, very narcissistic, a very early disturbance, very low structure. All this connects with the negative mother complex. But sometimes these people have complexes where they are always ruminating. And these are the aspects where you can work with them, because when you can feel these complex episodes, they are always complaining about. And I like to work on positive emotions, and there are some Swedish colleagues who are working very much with positive emotions. In the way you have to seduce these people, you have to ask them if your life would be a little bit easier. What would you like to do? What would you like to eat? What would you like to experience? Might work, might not work, because we all know these very early disturbances are very, very difficult to work with. But I think that the relationship, if we are patient enough to stay with them, then the relationship helps a lot. But I wouldn't accept just to say this is only a negative, it's a negative mother complex. I would also like to know, what's about the father complex, the grandfather complex, the grandmother complex? Sibling complexes are very important. And sibling, usually when you have a very negative mother complex, you are in rivalry. But if you have more than one sibling, then there is sometimes one relationship to a sibling that is a resource.
Ótimo. Obrigado, Verena. Bom, vamos lá, várias perguntas. Eu vou fazer um pedido para que as pessoas sejam sucintas, para a gente ter espaço para todo mundo perguntar, tá bom? Wagner, vamos lá?
E aí, Marcos?
No, Isa. Not everyone. I don't sit here until tomorrow. Come on.
Então, tudo bom, Marcos? Tudo bom, Verena? Um prazer escutar vocês. Um aspecto bastante interessante da fala da doutora Kast foi em relação aos inconscientes mútuos, né? Na relação transferencial, né? Na relação analista-paciente, né? Eu fiquei aqui pensando, né? Ainda, né, que isso possa causar desconfortos, né, em ambas as partes, existe um dado real, que é capturável, vamos dizer assim, tanto pelo paciente quanto pelo analista, que são as emoções advindas dessa relação, ainda que inconsciente. Porque eu pressuponho que nem tudo é 100% inconsciente, né? O Jung fala isso um pouco, né? Então, assim, um dado real é que as emoções, elas surgem mesmo onde há essa percepção do contágio. E, em princípio, né, caberia, né, ao analista ou ao paciente, ou ambos, talvez denunciarem isso na clínica, né? Falarem, olha, eu estou sentindo isso, eu estou sentindo aquilo outro, né? Eu sei que é uma tensão que ocorre ali, né? Então, a não ser que você tenha uma resistência de ambas as partes, aí eu acredito que prejudicaria a questão. Para ser sucinto, então, na pergunta, né? Acredito que dos eventos mais estressores dentro da relação clínica é quando o apaixonamento, né, do analista pelo paciente e do paciente pelo analista, né? Como fazer uma gestão, né, adequada desses sentimentos que fluem de forma espontânea dentro da clínica, sem matar o criativo que está na essência desse fluxo natural que acontece na clínica. Obrigado.
Yeah, I think so. I'm very happy that you take this up because I think we should be modest and know that emotions and feelings are coming up in us. Feelings are coming up in the patient. Sometimes we can speak about, sometimes we can't speak about, sometimes it's just only in our body. And I think for me, it is really this transference, countertransference. It is this, I concentrate on myself, I look what is coming up, and then the question, and this is the art of our psychotherapy, how do I do the wording? Because sometimes the more honest we are, the better is our wording. But it is also clear we have to be the ones who are containing the relationship, and we shouldn't get there should the trust. There should be trust. There should the relationship shouldn't be have too much ruptures. And if I bring my emotion too much in it, then we will have a rupture. And so this is why you say, how do I do it? I can't tell you how are you doing it. I'm doing it since 50 years, and I'm learning always. And sometimes I think I'm getting better, and sometimes I think it's terribly difficult. But that does not. But because it is so terribly difficult, I have the feeling that a generation before us, they didn't take serious this communal unconscious. They didn't take serious this what Jung says about that emotions are contagious. It is irritating because we have unconsciously we have a much bigger impact on other people than we think, not just us patients.
Obrigado, Wagner. Martinha, querida, tá aí?
Estou aqui sim.
Martinha, beijo.
Oi, um beijinho. Primeiro, assim, obrigada pela palestra. Olá, Verena. Gostei muito, né? E fiquei pensando também aqui nessa questão, né, do contato analista-paciente, né, que você falou do contágio e da possibilidade. Eu fiquei pensando assim na questão de sonhar com o paciente, né? Isso, eu fui uma vez, estava no congresso lá no Chile e aliás foi na Argentina, e o pessoal do Chile trouxe a questão de trabalhos, né, com sonhos o analista com sonhos com pacientes, né? Mas só que ali, como eles tratavam isso, era assim, não levando esses sonhos para os pacientes, né? E a minha questão é essa, né? A gente, dentro dessa relação, né? Assim, o sonhar com o paciente, tudo bem, indica um certo contágio, indica alguma coisa a mais, mas isso não seria muito importante também a gente poder trazer isso, né? E quais são as consequências também, acho que... Não, é lógico que não é para generalizar, sempre tem que contar ou não, mas assim, como é que seria a sua abordagem?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think it is clear for me, if I would dream about the patient, or I have sometimes dreamed about the patient, I think this has to do with our analytical relationship. And sure, first of all, I would think about I would go to the subjective level. To find out, perhaps, am I doing some projections, or what is there? And then if I have worked on it, then I think it is, for me, it's appropriate to bring it in the analytical process. And there is a saying of C. Jung when he says the dream is dreamed between the analyst and the analysand, each dream. This is in a letter to James Kirsch. He has written this. And I think we could expand this saying. And so I think this is also a possibility that both are doing imagination with these dreams, knowing it is not the dream of one, it's not the dream of the other, it's the dream of us. And then perhaps a meaning can emerge. I think if you just keep, perhaps they wanted to do a dream seminar, I don't know. For a dream seminar, you can talk about what you have dreamt about your analysis. But for it in the analytical process, I think this is very, very important. And it might be some, I remember once that I dreamed about a patient, and I was, sometimes I'm quite open, and we met, and I said, oh, by the way, I had a dream, you appeared in my dream. And this was a man, and he looked at me and he said, oh, I haven't known that I'm so important for you. Oh, tell me. And it was very cool. We had until this moment, we had a rather cool relationship, and this was the moment when it made click. And from this moment on, he could see his vulnerability. He had not to fight with me anymore. So it was, I think, it was not so important. The content of the dream was not so important. What was important, that I have dreamed about him, and that I just came into the session and said, hey, I had a dream about you.
Muito obrigada. Perfeito, perfeito.
Obrigado, Martinha, querida. Beijo.
Beijo.
Silvana, está por aí, Silvana?
Sim, estou aqui. Muito obrigada, Verena, é um prazer muito grande estar aqui e te ouvir. No seu livro, nesse livro, você fala de um assunto, você só fala um pouquinho, muito pouco, sobre o complexo filial que os pais desenvolvem. E você fala que, curiosamente, não se comenta sobre isso. Eu gostaria de pedir que você comentasse, porque eu acho que você falou do contágio, né? O quanto talvez os complexos parentais, né, originais, podem também estar alimentando ou trazendo à tona os complexos dos pais em relação aos filhos, e como isso, se pudesse falar um pouquinho sobre isso, é só essa questão que eu faria, pensando nos pais, né, na mãe ou no pai, que a gente fala muito mais dos filhos em relação aos pais, né, e os pais em relação aos filhos. Mais ou menos isso que eu queria ouvir um pouquinho.
Yeah, but the fathers and the mothers have also been daughters and sons, and this is why I say I make it very, very, very. I try to describe it. I do generalize it. I make it simple, and it is something very, very complex, because the father and the mother have also been sons and daughters, and they have also their complexes. They bring their father complex. I personally have a rather positive mother complex from a mother who has the mother complex from her father. And this makes it very interesting. So, and we could even go further, because then we have the grandfathers, and the question is really, was it possible to work on these complexes? Was it possible to separate not so much from the parents, but from the complexes? When my father, I worked once with a man who said, my father said, you are a good man if you work until you lie on the ground. And this was a father complexy sentence. Then after 3 heart attacks, I asked him, I said, look, don't you think that now it's okay? You lied on the ground now for 3 times. Don't you think that this is okay now, that you could live now your life? And this was very important for him. What makes me also think your question is, I didn't mention, it is so important to make a difference between the complexes and the parents. The parents in our complexes never get old. Our real parents get older, and they change. Even hard fathers can become, when they are older, they can become fragile. They can become they are very soft. They start to cry when you are coming home, and you can't understand. So the parents, as people, as personalities, they change, and the complexes never change. The father of the father complex, if you have such a definite complex episode, he has all this the age he had when you develop this complex.
Obrigado, Silvana.
Muito obrigada, muito obrigada.
Danke.
Camila Fenelon. Tudo bem, Camila?
Tudo bem. Boa tarde. Gratidão. Posso perguntar?
Por favor.
Gratidão pela oportunidade. Boa tarde a todos. Boa tarde, Verena. E eu quero perguntar como que eu posso pensar o complexo de Édipo e de Electra dentro desses complexos materno e paterno, se eu for pensar em um mito, para poder fazer uma ampliação do complexo também, assim, né? Pensar no complexo e ampliar ele, né?
Yeah, but if we are talking about Oedipal complexes and Electra complexes, we are even more generalizing. And I think especially the Oedipal complex, there has been wonderful research in last time about it is not anymore what we used to learn about. So for me, this Electra complexes, and this doesn't give us information. Look, I have really the opposite way to work on it. I'm going to the complex episodes I can find in the narrative, I can find in the dreams, and I'm working on that. And if in the end, this is a woman who thinks that she with the pattern of Electra. Actually, I'm working a lot with myths and with fairy tales, but I have never found out what the pattern of Electra really is. Sorry.
Obrigado, Camila. Vamos lá, Elizabeth. Tá aí, Elizabeth.
Oi, oi.
Olá, tudo bom?
Olá, boa tarde a todos. Parabéns por esse outro trabalho, viu?
Hi.
Então, eu gostaria de ouvir um pouco a Verena comentar sobre essa questão dos complexos parentais em crianças que convivem com cuidadores, assim, e que os cuidadores não convivem muito tempo. Uma hora é um, hora é outra, porque são crianças que foram abandonadas e não foram adotadas e adotam o complexo dos pais adotivos ou alguma coisa assim. Mas fica um pouco uma quebra assim, dessa cadeia genealógica, né? E, ao mesmo tempo, muito pouco tempo, com cuidadores muito diferentes, de diversos tipos, né? Então, gostaria de ver como a Verena vê isso, né? O que ela poderia falar para a gente.
Well, I can't tell you really, because for this we had to make really a study. I hear from your question that you are doubting, but I think it is better to have, if you have only one person. This is even what Jung is saying in his volume 3. If you have only one person, you have one mother, and this mother has no feeling for you, has no sense for you, then you get a very, very deep complex, a very, very deep negative complex. This is what Marcus said in the beginning. If you have different people, if you are in a bigger family, then you get your complexes not only from the mother, you get it also from the father, from the siblings, from the grandfather, from the grandmother. And so you are much less, even if someone is very nasty to you, you have other experiences. And for me, the question is not so much to have more people to relate. For me, the question is, do these people really relate? How is the quality of the relationship? If the quality of the relationship is really a good quality, for example, do these people have enough time for children? We have here in Europe the problem that in these situations for the children, there are much too many children, and there are only 2 or 3 caregivers, and this is really the problem.
Yes.
For that, we should give them a lot of money. I don't think it's not so much the question different people, because with different people you can make different experiences. You can learn. Some are really awful and some are wonderful. But the quality of relationship must be good, and they must be related, or at least good enough related. And so for this also the outer format must be okay.
Sim, obrigada. Exatamente sobre a questão do tempo mesmo, né? Passam muito pouco tempo nas mãos de várias pessoas que não têm essa condição. Que não tem nenhuma relação afetiva mais profunda, né? Ok, muito obrigada.
Obrigado, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I'm not so sure. I'm not so concerned. And I am also not so concerned because we can't avoid it. We only can make it better. And children can relate in a very short time. Children have a lot of resources.
Obrigado, Elizabeth. Thaís. Tá aí, Thaís.
Oi, boa tarde, gente.
Aí.
Boa tarde. Estou aqui? Estão me ouvindo?
Hi.
Tudo bom? Sim, sim.
Yeah, I can hear you,
Boa
I can
tarde,
see you.
Verena. Thank you very much. No caso de pacientes com complexos materno e paterno, extremamente negativos, abandono, rejeição, mas diferente desse sonho da sua paciente que as figuras psíquicas a apoiavam, os sonhos também mostram as figuras psíquicas ainda assim rejeitando, ainda assim criticando e ainda assim ignorando e abandonando. Nesses casos, o terapeuta, apenas o terapeuta, pode ser uma figura de apoio, apenas o terapeuta, para lidar com esses complexos?
Well, I don't believe that someone has only negative experiences, only negative mother complexes, only negative father complexes. I think if you would have this, you wouldn't live. You would have died. And so my question is always, where is a little bit of something life-sustaining or life-enhancing? I think this is an important point. And do not believe that you as the therapist are the only person in the world that can help someone. My experience is that sometimes between hours, our people make really very good experiences. And they can change. If we have the idea I'm the only one, I'm perhaps the only one who sees the misery, but I'm not the only one who helps these people to go on in life. And people can make really good experiences. And I think we have to be very careful when we are generalizing. I did generalizing with this book on the mother complexes and the father complexes. Okay, but usually I don't generalize, because if we generalize, if I say, oh, I'm scared, everything is scaring, I can't do anything. And we have to ask back our people. For example, depressed people say you this, so everything is scary, everything is boring, and so on. And then you say, and what about are you really scared? What is the situation that is really creating a lot of anxiety? And perhaps you have to be a little bit insistent. But then you get it. And these are the situations when you can change something. When we are generalizing, or when you say, oh, this patient has this and this and this and this, we have already given up.
Thank you, Verena. Thank you very much.
Obrigado, Thaís.
Obrigada também, gente.
Cris Psia, você fez uma pergunta aqui. Você não quer você própria fazê-la?
Boa tarde a todos. Boa tarde, doutora Verena. Gratidão por ouvir a senhora. Gratidão aí a Isa por traduzir. Eu tenho um caso em particular que eu tenho uma cliente que tem um complexo negativo muito forte, mas ela veio justamente porque ela não quer mais esse sentimento. E quando eu atendi ela as primeiras sessões, eu me sentia, ainda bem que ela era a última cliente, porque eu me sentia estrangulada, eu me sentia exaurida. E aí eu vinha para casa pensando no que acontecia nessa relação. E eu estava fazendo trabalho na Unip, o meu trabalho de conclusão sobre o artigo sobre isso. E aí, quando eu estava escrevendo o artigo, eu falei, os complexos estão se falando ali na clínica. Foi muito bacana eu perceber isso. E aí eu falei para ela, você está sentindo alguma coisa? A sua negação do seu feminino me provoca um estrangulamento, me provoca uma sensação de uma falta de potência, mas eu estou aqui com você. Aí ela falou, eu tento dificuldade de conversar com você por causa da minha garganta. E aí a gente conversou muito sobre isso, e aí está se apaziguando, mas é uma coisa que foi muito impactante, sabe? Em mim. E nela também, que depois agora ela tá se percebendo, foi muito bacana isso. Aí eu queria que a senhora falasse um pouco sobre o que aconteceu nessa coisa, que explosão foi essa? Eu entendi, foi um carrinho de batida.
Yeah. I think this is a wonderful example for being contagious. Because this was really a contagious, perhaps even a toxic, contagious relationship. And it seems that you, in working in a creative way about it, because this is also, when we say the unconscious has an influence on the unconscious of all the others, then when we are working on something, this must have a big impact on the analysis, on yourself, but also on the analysis. And this, I think, this is the moment when a new situation of relationship can emerge. What you say, it is like an explosion. It is like an explosion because all the good aspects that have been covered until now can come up. But it's a great example how we have to endure this toxic situation, this situation where we are contagious. Thank you.
Eu que agradeço.
Obrigado, Cris. Cris Viana, cadê você, minha amiga?
Estou aqui. Boa noite a todas, todos e todos.
Hi.
Muito obrigada, Verena. Verena, você é uma autora que para mim me inspira muito por tratar essa questão de gênero, né? Na questão de pais e mães aqui no Brasil, a gente está com uma questão importante, que é que nas certidões de nascimento para casais homoafetivos, enfim, e outras configurações paternas, não tenha mais a figura de pai e mãe na certidão de nascimento, né? Outro assunto que a gente está discutindo muito aqui no Brasil, daí já no nosso mundo aqui da psicologia analítica, é a questão ânima, ânimos e o par, né? Ânimos, ânima, porque eles ainda, para muitas pessoas, ainda estão ligados com o conceito que muitas delas, né, acham que ânimos seria a parte contrassexual do homem e o ânimos a parte contrassexual da mulher, né? Algumas pessoas que estudam aqui no Brasil ainda estão muito ligadas a isso. Como é que você está vendo essa questão, essa discussão de gênero na psicologia analítica, a partir do que você já escreveu, o que você está pensando, né, com atualização, com prática clínica? Porque eu acho muito linda essa ideia da ânimos ânima como arquétipo da paixão, né? Eu acho ela uma ideia muito inspiradora, e eu queria te ouvir um pouquinho sobre isso. Obrigada.
Yeah, for me, animus and anima are a couple, and everyone has this couple in the depths of the psyche. And you can also see in the beginning we have very much dreams about complexes, and then for me, anima and anima are the unknown strangers in the psyche. And I think we have, it is much too much gender fixated, because then we have the idea it's the man in the psyche or it's the woman in the psyche, but I think this is too precise. But in any case, I think we have both, and this is also why gender is such fluent.
Obrigada.
I think we should do much more studies about this, but it is not that easy because I don't know how it is in your clinical work, but in our clinical work, we are doing a lot of psychotherapy. We are not, when I started to work in the 1970s, we did much more analysis. But by now we are doing much more psychotherapy. And in psychotherapy, it's very rare that you get this access to this inner unknown mysterious figures. And I think these figures are a symbol for your unknown mysterious ground of the soul. But the research we should do is we should really collect such dreams, we should collect such imaginations and try to find out what it really means. But I think it's very hard to do it because I must admit, I think in the last 10 years, I have seen one dream with a very clear, and I even wouldn't say it's not a man or a woman. It was a mysterious green figure, and the mysterious green figure had been looking into the wood. That was a,
Obrigada.
Obrigado, Cris. Patrícia Eugênio, minha amiga, por favor.
Olá. Verena, estou nervosa de falar com você, porque você é importante para mim, para minha formação, pelo que eu converso com os supervisionandos. Queria te dizer da sua influência na minha prática clínica, antes de mais nada. E queria te fazer uma pergunta. O Winnicott fala bastante da rematernagem como uma forma que a gente poderia dizer de curar esse complexo materno. Lacan fala que se a gente não tem um pai, a gente tem como criar esse pai. Religião, time de futebol, agremiações. Na prática clínica, na condução de usando um termo psicanalítico da saída, né, que ele usa para a saída do Édipo, para a saída do complexo materno e do complexo paterno, o que você entende como agentes de uma melhora para esse complexo negativo? Relacionamentos, a maternidade, além da própria análise, acho interessante quando você diz que bom que não somos as únicas responsáveis em promover essa melhora, né? Você fala de situações. O que são essas situações? Aonde estão os lugares de apaziguamento de complexos negativos?
Look, when we are working with a complex, I said the complex occurs in a situation, is generated in a situation where bonding would have been important and it has not occurred. And when we are working on it in the analytical process, we offer the bonding. I don't like the idea that you have to mother your analysis. I have seen too many very strange situations in analytical not in analytical, in psychotherapeutic directions, where people had, for example, pampers, they had to have pampers because they want to be children again and so on. And I don't think that this is a good way to do it. So this is the bonding. This is the bonding. When Lacan says, when you don't have fathers, you create fathers, we all do that because there is the archetypal aspect of the complex or behind the complex, and you can transfer your father complex onto God Father, or you can project it onto Aristoteles or whatever you are doing. I don't think that this necessarily means that you have a healthier father. I was working a lot with people who with grief, with loss. And we have sometimes the situation that someone says, I hated my father, I have not to grieve. I have not to grieve him. And this is not correct, because they are very close. They can't let go. And my technique is first to make an imagination, in the sense, what kind of father would you have liked to have? So just do an imagination, what kind of father, but not only what kind of father, but also, and how would you have developed with this father? And this leads to the situation that there is a moment when they say, okay, but I prefer to have my father. He had very bad ideas, but there had also been some good aspects of it. And with such an ideal father, I wouldn't have become who I am now. I think this is also a way to create. You try to create a fantastic father, and then you come back to your father and you see him in a different way. You see not only, because we are generalizing usually when we say, and it's a negative complex, and then you see not only this, but I think the mothering we are doing in this bond, and I think we try to be very honest in the relationship to our analysts. If we do not only do a dream seminar, because there had been a generation of analysts who did dream seminars, very interesting dream seminars with patients or with the analysts. And the analytic relationship was not in the focus.
Obrigado, Patrícia.
Obrigada, Verena, Marco.
Verena, queria te fazer a última pergunta.
Yeah, that's fine. It's great. It's almost 10 o'clock in the evening.
Há livro teu que é Abandonar o Papel de Vítima. Isso não nos permitiria dizer que nós somos vítimas dos nossos complexos?
Yeah, this book has to do with that, because when we are talking about complexes, and when Jung says it is the encounter, the difficult encounter with a demand or with a person, and I say this is a dysfunctional relationship, then we have the child and we have the adult, I say now. And the child is usually a victim of the adult who is attacking him or her. And now you can, as an adult, you grow up, and you are always identified with the child. Actually, the whole dysfunctional relationship is internalized with the episodic memory. So we have both parts. Because it is not just we project the perpetrator on the analyst. It is I can when we have our soliloquies, we are talking to ourselves like our father of the father complexes or mother of the mother complexes has been speaking to us. So we are the victim, but we can also be the attacker. We can be the aggressor. We can be it towards the analyst, we can be it towards the world. But as long as we are on this vibe, either to be the victim or to be the aggressor, we are always in the complex. And in the moment when we stop to identify with the victim, especially when we can accept that we identify also with the aggressor. We are not like the blaming mother, but in some situations we are also like the blaming mother. And it takes a lot of courage to accept that in this moment we can leave the complex. And this means don't, sometimes people have the idea it's so important to be a victim. If you have difficulties in life, at least you are a grandiose victim, and this is also grandiose. But we have to be efficacious. We have to try to do anything. Just to be a victim, that's not enough. And this is why I have written this book, and I'm very happy that you brought it up. I didn't really know that it is translated in Portuguese. But I'm happy that it is translated in Portuguese, because I think for me it's an important book. Thanks, Marcus.
Verena, queria te agradecer pela tua generosidade, pela tua disponibilidade. Eu sei que já está tarde aí em Zurique, para você ter ficado aqui conosco. Nós ainda temos aqui 290 pessoas. É um número muito significativo. Obrigado pela tua amorosidade, pelo teu carinho, por você ter compartilhado tanto, de maneira tão simples e didática e amorosa, teu saber conosco. Queria te agradecer em nome do Tiaços, meu, da Luciana Ximenes, da Isa. Meus complexos paterno e materno também te agradecem. Seja bem-vinda. Espero que a gente possa ter uma nova oportunidade de ter você conosco novamente. Muito obrigado.
Thank you, Marcus. This is very nice, very, very nice. No, it was a pleasure to be with you. It was a pleasure to be with you. It's another kind of, you are another crowd. Then I'm talking to, and it's very nice. Also with this translation and so on. And thank you for the questions. You helped me a lot to elaborate some aspects I couldn't elaborate in my talk. Thank you very much, and all the best for you. And yeah, have a good time.
Eu te falei que era uma festa. Te avisei antes. É uma festa.
Yeah, it is a party. In a way, it is a party. Okay.
Um abraço.
Tchau.
Pessoal, obrigado pela presença. Realmente hoje foi
Bye.
Maravilhoso, Marcos. Maravilhoso.
Um número exorbitante.
Thank you very much, Luciana.
Parabéns.
Marcus, for organizing the whole thing. Good night.
Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Vielen Dank.
Gute Nacht.
Gute Nacht.
Ja,
Auf Wiedersehen.
Auf Wiedersehen. Tchau.
Auf Wiedersehen.
Tchau, gente. Linda.
Tchau, obrigada.
Obrigada,
Tiaços.
Peraí, calma.
Tá bom, estamos
aqui
então.
Já com o convite. Luciana, tá aí, Luciana?
Pelo amor.
Vamos lá. Diz aí, Lu, por favor.
10 de março agora. Tem carnaval aí, então nós vamos ficar só em março. Meio-dia, por causa do fuso horário, que é a indiana, que eu não sei falar o nome dela.
Faz mal.
Sengupta.
Sengupta, né? A sua é ótima. Ela vai lançar nesse semestre um livro sobre o ânimos.
Uau.
E ela está fazendo uma relação do ânimos, uma perspectiva decolonial, a partir da perspectiva da Índia. Ela tem um livro fantástico que é sobre Jung e a Índia.
Oba.
Vai ser uma oportunidade muito, muito rica, tá? A gente vai fazer divulgação, só lembrem do horário, que como ela está na Índia, vai ser meio-dia. Pessoal, obrigado pela presença.
Obrigada a vocês.
O bloco do Tiaços vai
Obrigada
estar
a todos.
Obrigada.
Tchau.
Obrigada. Tchau. Oi, tchau.
Tchau, Martinha.